For a little girl, I was like, oh my gosh, where is the playbook? And that didn't exist.
Our guest is Dr. Bryan O. Rojas-Araúz, a bilingual, bicultural, licensed psychologist and Afro-Latino immigrant of Costa Rican and Panamanian descent. He is a clinical assistant professor member in the International Disaster Psychology, Trauma, and Global Mental Health Program at the University of Denver. He is a scholar, activist, healer, speaker, educator, and the co-founder of Inlakich Counseling, Education, and Consulting. He specializes in working with global majority BIPOC communities, immigrants, men's issues, couples, and families, first generation professionals, and college students. He provides immigration and mental health evaluations for refugees and asylum seekers. He does speaking engagements and wellness retreats. Just as a reminder, this podcast, this episode, it is not a replacement for therapy. Before you got diagnosed, how did that all happen?
It's funny, right? Whenever you get diagnosed with ADHD, you're never surprised.
Mm.
Like, no, of course, that makes sense. I seen it coming. For me, the first time that I almost got diagnosed, I was a first year junior college student. I was 18 years old, going to Diablo Valley College. Shout out to them.
That's in the northern part of
Uh,
California, right?
NorCal in the house. Gotta love it. East Bay, kind of in Concord, California. I remember I had a really hard time in high school getting work done. I was usually on the go or busy with life happening. I'm doing college without knowing how to college.
Mm.
And along the way, someone says, hey, have you ever thought about getting tested for ADHD? The
Mm.
reason why this professor pointed that out was because without me thinking too much about it at the time, I would start in one chair and then sometimes I would move around the classroom, but I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just something we did. Uh, and he at the time was like, hey, you should go get tested, do X, Y, and Z. And I went to see a counselor. I remember they gave me a packet. Back then, we did things by hand, right? Talking about almost 20 years ago. They gave me a packet that was so thick. I was like, do y'all miss the part where I have ADHD and you want me to fill this out? Like, that
Yeah.
wasn't gonna happen. The other thing that had me walk away from it was they asked me for a social security number. At the time, I wasn't documented.
Mm.
The moment they asked me for a social security number, it kind of shut down the conversation. I was like, it's fine. I'm doing okay. I don't need the extra help. I don't need the extra time. So I almost blocked myself from getting the services that I deserve and getting the services that I should have access to. Fast forward some, and I am now a doctoral student at the University of Oregon.
Mm.
It is 2016, and Trump just got elected as president. At the time, I'm a green card holder. My whole life being an immigration advocate, social justice organizer, community organizer. So I'm feeling that a doctoral program no longer makes sense.
Mm.
Why am I here?
Yeah.
Nobody cares about this paper I'm writing on ADHD at the time, actually.
Oh,
I was,
okay. Look at you investigating about yourself.
I was writing a paper on childhood and ADHD for a child development class, and I felt that it was kind of pointless, right? Like I wanted to be in the community. I wanted to be out in the streets.
Mm.
I wanted to go organize because I felt my community was under attack. Not different from where we are today, right?
Yeah, seriously.
And that was very real. I think that as ADHDers, we have a strong like duty to justice
Mm.
because we're able to pay attention to so much and we're able to process and contextualize what's happening. Justice feels more personal. Injustice feels more personal.
Mm.
So let me say that again, right? Because of our ability to take so much in, our way of contextualizing makes it where injustice feels more personal to us, even if it's not about us.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I was like, Trump is president. I'm feeling overwhelmed with all the classes. Second year at the University of Oregon. Go Ducks. It's tough. It's hard. It's the hardest year, I think, out of all of them because it's the first year where you're doing 16 credits of classes, clinical work, research. And I had so much I was juggling that I was feeling like I was drowning. So
Yeah.
first, it didn't feel like the right time. It didn't feel like the work was important. Secondly, it was so much that I wasn't doing well. And it was my first time going to therapy.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
I had been a mental health provider for 5 years at that point.
Mm,
So I had been providing services
mm,
to other folks. And I believed in it. Therapy is great,
yeah.
right? And I definitely believed in it, just not for myself.
I feel that when I thought about like, okay, I would like to get a graduate degree in counseling psychology, I hadn't been to therapy. I remember thinking like,
That's
yes, I
unreal,
want to
though.
help people, but then I wasn't helping
Mhm,
myself. And it's so
mhm.
hard because I think about the stigma that exists within our community. And I think as helpers, sometimes we forget to look inward or we don't take the time to process how is the work that we're doing for ourselves also impacting how we show up in these sessions.
Probably one of the biggest gifts to my clients was becoming a client myself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
So
feel that for sure.
there's a plugin for healers also need healing.
Mm,
And I go into therapy with my set of goals, process, acculturation, stress, and the stress of being an immigrant that was not a citizen at the time under a Trump presidency that was literally built on a lot of xenophobia and attacking immigrant communities.
yeah.
So one of my mentors, Dr. Joseph White, I gave him a call and I'm like, yo, Dr. White, I'm about to quit U of Oregon. I don't know that I can keep doing this thing. My community needs me. I need to be out in the streets, organizing, putting the skills that I do have into work. And honestly, school felt trivial. I was like, what am I doing here? Who am I helping by being here?
Mm.
And he said something that stuck with me, which was, Bryan, you have to believe that someone else will take your spot in the street because not just anyone can take your spot in academia.
Mm.
We need you to be where you're going to be at.
Yeah.
And that helped me stay in. I started looking at ADHD, got diagnosed for the first time in my life, got referred medication,
Mm.
used medication for the first time. And I was like, everybody else been cheating. Y'all mean that y'all got it like this? Under
Yeah.
so
I'm curious, what was it like to start medication?
it was in a lot of ways eye-opening. Something that stood out to me was this like difference on our ability to focus on a task and get it done in a different kind of way. It also made it real to me that here I was, a second year doctoral student, which meant all of my education, I was just taking live raw, right? There
Yeah.
was no extra help, there was no accommodations, there was none of these things that now in a position as a psychologist, someone that works directly with folks with ADHD or ADHDers, right? It's wild to me. In some ways, I had fell through the cracks all the way to my second year of a doctoral program, right? If we're talking about undergrad, a 3 years master's, and the beginning of this doctoral experience had all been just me kind of like trying my best and struggling to do all the things, but still doing them.
Mm.
Um, and taking medication kind of opened my eyes to that. It also made me realize that it's not just all medication, right? For example, now I don't take medication when I work with clients.
Mm.
And I'm not on medication right now because a couple of things happens when I take medication. I know that I will get tasks done and I'll be able to get things taken care of,
Mm-hmm.
but my personality changes a little bit,
Mm.
right? Because I'm hyper focused, I'm a little bit less funny. And I
Mm.
think that my humor is part of who shows up in the clinical room.
Yeah.
I don't take medication when I gotta teach
Mm.
because relationally is how I teach, is how I try to focus the work that I do.
Yeah.
So I've learned when I want to take medication and under what circumstances,
Mm.
and the importance of following what's true to me and what works for me.
Yeah.
Uh, and again, recognizing we are in over medication of folks and not enough space is created for behavioral interventions. So that to
Yeah.
say that the combination is
I
super
agree.
important.
For sure. The combination, the research out there has shown that both is what's going to be able to help with ADHD.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing just how your journey with medication has been too. You were doing it when you were in grad school. Right now, you're more intentional with when you decide to take it or when you take breaks from it because you recognize the impact that it has relationally, whether it's with client work, teaching. What a journey you've been on with having gone through your schooling throughout childhood, adolescence, undergrad, master's degree. And then as you're in your doctoral program is when you decide, let's get a diagnosis, that additional support. And it happening after this conversation with Dr. White. May he rest in peace. I know he was a huge mentor for you, but in that moment when you were thinking about quitting, I hear it transformed into, instead of quitting, you decided to keep pursuing the PhD and get that additional support for your ADHD.
Yeah, what he told me in the moment resonated.
Mm,
It was not just my responsibility to myself, but my responsibility to my community and what it means now to be a immigrant American psychologist, business owner, entrepreneur, speaker, like all these things that a lot of times we don't see ourselves reflected in.
yeah.
And Dr. White was big on you might not be able to pay it back, so you pay it forward.
Mm.
And really, really standing in that space.
Definitely. It's so powerful to hear how he had told you instead of being out in the streets, it's harder to be in the space that you are in, which is being in these doctoral programs, because you're right. Like, he's right. It's not easy. There's so many systemic barriers to be able to get into college. And then when you take into consideration how it's harder for also for people with ADHD, especially when you don't have the diagnosis, the accommodations, like you said, you're doing it raw and yet you're pushing through and you are in this space that a lot of folks from our community are not.
Hmm.
Mm.
Absolutely. And I still carry that now, right? And when we say our community, whether it's the ADHD community or the previously undocumented or immigrant community, right?
Yeah, you
Is that
identify with so many intersecting communities, both the
hmm
immigrant community, because you mentioned being undocumented, and then identifying with the Latine community and also with the ADHD community. I
Yeah.
appreciate how you are intentional with the work that you do and how your passion comes from a sense of who you are and how that shows up in the work that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah,
Of
absolutely.
course, of course. And speaking of intersecting identities, you are a father now. What has it been like for you to approach fatherhood with ADHD?
Well, first and foremost, shout out to all my fathers out there. Fatherhood's hard. My favorite hood, hands down, most beautiful, wonderful, hardest thing I ever engaged with. And I got a whole PhD at some point in my life, right? So recognizing that, the beauty of being a father, recognizing the beauty of being a girl dad. I was petrified of becoming a dad at some point, and especially for a little girl. I was like, "Oh my gosh, where is the playbook?" And that didn't exist.
Mm,
When I was thinking of this question, how does ADHD impact my approach to fatherhood or to being a dad? Some of the first things that came to mind was, well, it's hard. It's a lot of moving parts. It's no longer just about you. And sometimes you have a hard enough time just taking care of you to now I have to have somebody else's schedule that doesn't even talk yet.
mm,
Yet I need to be able to take care of them. But the farther along I went into thinking about this, actually, I was like, the same way that some of the things that I love the most about me are connected to my ADHD,
mm.
some of the strongest things that I bring to my fatherhood or my parenting are also connected to my ADHD. And that's what I want to focus on,
Yeah, I'd
right?
love to
And
hear more
really,
about that.
yeah, yeah, like bringing in the strengths of what it means to be a ADHD Latin father. Like this is part of it. So the first thing is fun, creativity, and playfulness.
Mm.
We have a lot of fun around here. One of the superpowers of ADHD is your ability to be a snazzy dresser or have a good sense of style. So I'll be matching fits with my baby,
Oh, I
uh,
love that.
like we be looking around, like, yeah, that's right. Uh, starting a little bit. We have beatboxing sections. So one of the first things she learned how to do was go right in response to me trying to beatbox in front of her.
Yeah.
Which again, love it. And I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity of having someone with ADHD read you a book,
Mm.
buckle in, especially if it's a book with pictures. We love them. Uh, and we're having a blast. We're making extra noises and sound effects and all these other things. The other thing that comes to mind that has influenced my fathering is mindfulness and intentionality.
Mm,
Like I know I have ADHD and I know that it would be easy for me to let some things fall. So continuing to work on my mental health, being mindful of that because of my ADHD and everything else that comes, right? Like that's not my only identity when I go into therapy.
right.
Um, but one of many. Also, being able to figure out tools or techniques. What else comes to mind as I think of ADHD and being a father? Spontaneity and adventure. Like
Yeah.
I love the time that I spend with my kiddo. And right now I have the privilege of being in private practice. I get to work for myself and create my schedule. And that also means that I get to block time for my baby. And we have like set dates every week where we hang out.
Aw.
And I might just grab her and go to the zoo, or we'll go drive through the car wash. So you continue to father and continue to live life. But now you have a plus one that hopefully is really excited to come along.
Yeah, definitely.
So that comes to mind. And lastly, as ADHDers, we have a lot of empathy.
Mm.
We're big feelers and we feel with others. And I think that that relational space, first with your child is different, but with my daughter, I think that when we were doing sleep training, I
When you're
remember the
doing
very
what now?
first sleep training.
Oh, sleep
So
training.
that's
Yeah.
a whole beast.
Oh, yeah, I've
Um,
heard.
like, let me tell you.
When's the last time you got sleep?
Right? Well, I'm gonna give a quick shout out to my daughter, Eloa Xiomara, Eloa X, because she's sleeping through the night and she sleeps about 12 hours a night right now.
Oh, wow. That's
She goes from like
great.
7 p.m. to like 7 a.m. for
Yeah.
most days. Cannot recommend sleep training enough.
Mm.
We waited a long time to get it done because that empathy piece made it where we would try starting and I would hear her cry and I'd be like, my little heart, I'm gonna go cry with her. Like,
No.
I can't. Um,
Yeah.
I remember that very first night, like you start learning your child's cry. And that first night, the cry felt almost like a betrayal cry, like, Daddy, I know you are here. Like she doesn't talk, she's a baby, but like I could feel it. Like
Yeah, you know
you are
your
here and you're not
child.
picking me up. Like, what's up?
No.
We had something good going on, and that was what's going on, Daddy. Like, papi, ¿qué pasó? And it was hard for me, but I think that's what's gonna make me a great father. Like the empathy I have for her, the understanding of being a baby and the difficulty of not being able to communicate. Like I was an immigrant that didn't speak English,
Mm.
and how frustrating and difficult that was for me as a
Yeah.
13-year-old kid. And now thinking of her when she's sick,
Mm.
right? Not getting frustrated with her, but instead understanding that she's not trying to make my life hard. Like she's struggling right now. And lastly, continuously move into the I get to do this versus the I have to do this.
Mm.
I get to have a child. I get to see her grow up. I get to love on her. I get to show her, hopefully, to grow up and be a kind, loving, compassionate human outside of that, whatever she wants.
That's so beautiful. I love how you've been embracing your relationship with your daughter and noticing the strengths that come with being a father with ADHD. You mentioned the spontaneity, the adventurousness that you get to do with your child because also you know that you have this flexibility with your work in private practice. And I loved hearing how creative and how humorous you get when you're reading the books with her and doing weird noises and sounds and different, I'm sure, like voices with the reading and the
Mhm.
characters and the picture books. That sounds
Yeah.
like such an adventure in itself. And then
No,
also
we
you
have a good
bring
time.
yeah, it sounds like it. Like I want to be in that room. I want to hear you read a book.
Come on.
Maybe for another
You invited to
episode, you can
the
read a
next,
book for
yeah.
us.
We can do that.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. And you brought up such a unique piece about empathy because you recognize that with ADHD, empathy is the strength And also, this other part of your identity as an immigrant, where growing up, English wasn't your first language, and frustration of not being able to communicate with others when you don't speak the same language. And I hear you have
Mm,
that empathy for your daughter because she's too young to talk. And so you know that she's
mm.
not intentionally trying to frustrate you. She's trying to communicate, but doesn't have the words yet. And you having the patience because you understand what it's like to have a hard time communicating with people.
Absolutely. When I came to the US at 13 years old, I came to my aunt's house who had a 2-month-old in the home.
Mm.
While the baby was learning language, so was I. Uh,
Oh.
and have a great relationship with my cousin. Out in Berkeley, California. And this idea of communication, connection, and how much we're reliant on it, and also for our baby, like
Mhm.
the parallels of that processes. Uh,
Yeah. I want to transition us to the last question. What's advice you would offer to other Latina fathers with ADHD trying to balance careers and family?
I think as a Latino father with ADHD, juggling career, family, life, hopefully still having a identity outside of being a father, right? Like
Mm.
that's important as well. A lot of things we're juggling. One takeaway message would be prioritizing self-compassion and structure,
Mm.
right? It's important for us to remember that we cannot give from an empty cup. And having a newborn at home is going to take a lot from your cup.
Yeah.
So making sure that you refill that. And the way that we do that around here is my wife will, we have days where I'm with the baby from the moment she wakes up till noon. And she knows that day she can sleep in, go to do yoga, whatever she needs to do for herself
Mm.
in that space. And I get Saturday mornings, right? I can do whatever I need to do, whether it's business related or not, and creating space for that. Also within the relationship, and I know this is not about relationships necessarily, but continuing to create space to continue to date your partner, even if
Mm.
there's a baby.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a couple therapist, so that comes up, connection being so important.
Yeah.
Also being flexible when things don't go as planned, that self-compassion piece.
Mm.
You might create plans that don't come out to be what you wanted them to be. We're not aiming for perfection.
Mm-hmm.
So being kind to yourself when things fall through, when things are not 100% what you were hoping. And I'll give you some very specific things that will help us in avoiding some of those fall throughs, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So involving your family in creating routines, making sure that there's a conversation where all of us are involved and knowing who is where and when,
Mm.
right? What that looks like for me and my wife is at the beginning of the year, we get together and we have a year planning meeting as a couple, as
Mm.
a partnership. And we're looking at schedules, occasions, and we're looking at all these other things that are important for us now as a family. Also, it helps us share the load. Like we can visually see who's with the baby where and when, and the importance of that. Also, share calendars.
Mm.
So creating a shared calendar where anything family related goes on there. You'll be going to plenty of baby appointments, having to go to the doctors or the zoo, museum, spend time with grandparents, whatever that might look like. We are both informed right away as we go along the way. And I also ask for reminders. And my wife knows she's married to an ADHDer,
Mm.
and I recruit her
Yeah.
in supporting me in being the best version of a father and husband that I can be.
Yeah.
That helps with the structure part of things. And going back to this idea that it's about balance. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to mess up. Things are going to change. Babies get sick. The
Mm-hmm.
teething is terrible. And every time you feel that, you unlock or you have completed that level, a new level unlocks of difficulty and something new will come in.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like being compassionate for that as well. Uh,
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that advice because they're really helpful. I think about how every child, every parenting journey is very unique because new challenges arise in different ways, and having open communication and constantly revisiting the structure that you've built with flexibility and lean on each other while also practicing self-compassion and compassion for others. I want to wrap it up by asking any offerings that you have going on with your business and the best way to contact you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Love that. That's a question. So a couple things coming up. We'll be doing a couples retreat in Costa Rica.
Oh,
The,
couples retreat in Costa Rica.
yeah,
Shoot.
there's gonna be other ones coming up. This is just the first one. I think that we're also gonna do mindfulness and other forms of training, all the things coming up, speaking engagements, trainings happening throughout the year. If the organization needs someone to come and speak on diversity, equity, inclusion, men's mental health, what does it mean, or how to better serve global majority populations, meaning BIPOC and other folks,
Mhm.
also do that and trying to have fun as we go along the way. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course. Thank you so much for sharing. And what would be the best way for people to contact you or reach out to you?
my website is the first thing that comes to mind, inglakeshcac.com or 720-515-5354. That's my cell. Don't overuse it, but if you need something, give us a call.
Only during business hours.
Only during business
Whatever
hours.
time zone you're in, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We go global, so let's make it happen.
It was so lovely to have Bryan on the Latine ADHD podcast, hearing about that moment where he was close to quitting his program and nonetheless he persevered. He started getting support, medication, the resources in place to be able to help him navigate grad school with ADHD, and then how he taps into the strengths of his ADHD, be able to embrace being a father. And here's some advice that he suggests for Latine dads out there with ADHD, and knowing that you're not alone with it. Also, when you start to see how your ADHD can have both strengths and challenges, you're able to figure out how to manage it better and move forward with grace. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope y'all take care.